Good morning, good afternoon. I'm Keith Reynolds, and welcome to SMarketPlace, Sales, Marketing, and Rock and Roll. I'm here today with Kevin Juza. Kevin, welcome.
Hey, good to see you.
I should say welcome back.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's been a while. Last time we talked about your ideas on sales and working. I'd like to pick up on that conversation on working with CEOs who are making that transition to uh, getting their sales team together. Maybe they've had one business development person supporting their efforts, but now it's take time to take it to the next level. And what are some of the tools and content and processes that you need to start thinking differently?
Yeah, no, I appreciate, Keith, the opportunity to share my ideas here and what's worked for me when I've been out there working with my clients. So when it has that founder-led sales model, when it's kind of like they're in the founder, the CEOs in the kitchen while they're making the dinner for the sales process, they usually get in the way of how salespeople truly operate. My experience, they're so used to working with people in marketing or or development for software or their solution that it's like, here's the punch list, go do these things, report back to me, let me check everything, and then go out there and do it again and rinse and repeat until that business kind of that product or that the software develops to the point where it's ready to go to market. They think that's the same way sales works, and it really doesn't. They think if I just hire a great vice president of sales from that industry of the clients they market to, they're going to come over and bring their Rolodex and know who to go to and take the business to the next level. And the hardest part is they don't trust you. They don't trust the product. They don't trust if I bring a customer over, I might get them a good deal because they'll be the first customer. But will the product actually deliver? Will it hurt my image? Will my name not be strong? So they have to truly believe in the product before they actually open their Rolodex. So when you bring in a founder-led sales, if you bring in a salesperson, you have to have a lead funnel for them. If you don't, they're not going to do the work to help you close your business.
Right.
So,
And they may have sold themselves as having that um, that Rolodex, right? And
right.
really try to say the things that the CEO wants to hear.
Or the other CEO looks at their LinkedIn and goes, "This is the person. I know they have the business. I see the companies they've sold to," and they assume that they would open their Rolodex up. And if you have a person who opens a Rolodex up, the uh, the incentives would be so large to really have that person do that at the first get go for a startup or Series A or B company, because the salesperson doesn't know, are you going to be able to survive and pay me for, am I here for 1 year, 1 month, or 10 years? I'll open my Rolodex if I'm here for 10 years. you
Right.
know, it's so, but if I'm just here for the short term, or I don't know if I have good foundation, they're not really going to do that. So that's like the pull and give that the founder has to work with, because the founder believes it's going to go, it's going to be here forever. But as startups don't. There's a lot more startups than successes. That's because it's a process for people to fail, learn, grow, fail, learn, grow, fail, hit it. You know,
So, and that takes time that may not be the runway of the founder.
correct, correct. And the founder has this uh, ego that is inflated in the sense that the deals they've closed so far, majority of them were came in from their investors because their investor wants it to work. So they put their money in it. So they're kind of, they want it to deliver something. So they can find clients for them, and the founder closes them and they feel like, man, I got the best presentation pitch deck ever. I'm getting these closing these deals. We're winning. But to go out to the marketplace through phone, email, LinkedIn, to build trust, to build awareness, get somebody to raise their hand and say, okay, I'm willing to hear your pitch. They're going to come from a different perspective because they're not pre-sold on the idea that if this doesn't go well, I have my friend that can wring your neck, versus customers out there. If you don't do your job, I've lost my money, and then I maybe lose my job for picking a failed product or service.
You've had some
So
really interesting uh, comments around what the right team is in that early stage. Do you go get the high-powered salesperson that, is a rainmaker, or do you get somebody who's more of a BDR and support them with marketing and help them build a, as you said, deliver the leads and work on more of an inbound basis. Tell us a little bit about how you advise um, your CEOs that you work with.
yeah, I truly come down to the fact of bringing in that first level business coordinator, business development rep, sales development rep, whatever you want to call them. They're the person that's going to be working with your CRM, managing any inbound leads, but also more importantly, going outward to outbound calls and emails and building up a sales pipeline. I know strategically if I get a BDR to work with me and put a basic structure together within within 2 months, they should be setting 1 to 3 meetings a week through the process of doing a typical sequence. And it's that muscle memory to do that. And when you're doing that alongside the founder has been struggling to get meetings other than when they come from the higher up people. But to grow their leads, they're not used to that. So when they start seeing a BDR delivering a meeting in that first month, and then 2 to 3 meetings a week going into that second to third month, the founder now trusts this BDR more and more. They're not going to be micromanaging them because that's my job to kind of keep them going in what that sales process is. And I'm used to herding cats, and I know how to maneuver around making salespeople focus on what the priorities are and get them moving every day. And then when they start making those meetings, and the founders now are taking these meetings and they're not closing them on the first dial, they're learning it's tougher. But they're also teaching this new BDR what the sales pitch is. They know how the BDR, because they're young, they're aggressive, they want to be a salesperson. They're going to start giving the founder feedback and advice and ideas and trying new things. And it's going to come from the point where the founder's like, my bird is growing. It's about to fly away, they can feel part of that growth of that person. And that trust is now building. The trust is there. So then in that fourth or fifth month, that BDR is now taking the first meeting. They're doing the first pitch deck. They're getting the meetings to the next level. And then about 6 to 8 months, they're now able to do the proposal meeting and then start that process. And the founders are only really coming in on either a big ass deal or the closing out of it, so because they want the endorphin rush of closing the deal. They want to, but
Right.
we just can't let them steal the win. The win's got to go to the salesperson. That's what when I worked at a large company, in the vice president of sales would always come in and steal the close, and the salesperson never learned how to close because they weren't able to do that.
Hmm.
So over time they're able to close those deals. Then the founder now has within a year they have a trained salesperson that has a pipeline, has maybe 5 to 1,000 connections within the industry or market they're going after, and they develop this person to be a salesperson. And then in that process of this person elevating, you then hire a BDR underneath them, and they're training, teaching, leaning, and they're all aligned now to how the founder created them. And then they're ready for when you have that 3 or 4 people in this pipeline of sales processes. You're then able to then hire a full-time sales manager, vice president of sales, who then has a team with a healthy pipeline to then come in, and you're willing to pay the 150, $200,000 kind of salary to then manage these people and then take their experience and get it over expand. It's a multiplier then. um, I always say too, when you're interviewing me, when I'm coming in as a consultant, I say I have hammers, I have tools, I can build this, and I love to build and train and coach, and that's what I do. I'm not a maintenance person. I'm not an elevator to the next. That's not me. so I build it. But if you hire a full-time person who's got a hammer, they never want to put it down, and they have to stop building, and they have to start, speeding it up and refining it and moving it faster. That's where you bring in that person from the industry who has a Rolodex. You can see there's an engine moving here, and it's real, and they can do it. Um, I've been in companies where we just hired 4 salespeople. Now we need them leads. So we're going to hire can you help come in and be the BDR kind of team building process? And I'm like, sure, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work unless I manage the salespeople and basically start teaching them how to BDR themselves. And they'll quickly get up to that year faster. But you have to treat them when you hire a startup hires a salesperson, 80, 90, $100,000 type of salary person. They need to be managed as a BDR that first month, 2 months, because getting that rust off to be able to get their own business, being on the phone, they've got to be able to do that and kind of be forced to remember those muscles that they learned 10 years ago, because they need to be helped. They all need to have their hands in.
So tell us a little bit about the kind of support that you give those first two, 1, 2, 3 reps before you hire the full time sales VP. What kind of you've mentioned marketing as being a really important part of that. Talk about how you use marketing and the things that you like to give the salespeople.
Yeah, when I'm sitting there talking to founders or Series A type people, and they have money now, they want to invest in the right place to move the business. I always tell them, save your money. Don't buy a crow. Don't hire a crow or a vice president. Hire your chief marketing officer. Hire somebody who's going to take your vision and know how to put it into words, into campaigns that then are aligned with the salespeople. So if you start the business off, in my team typically would then report to marketing at the beginning of their process, because every dollar goes into marketing needs to have a high ROI into sales.
Yep.
And if you don't have a high ROI in sales in a startup, then your investors are going to be asking, what did this marketing give you? I got a great brand now. Yeah, but
Right.
no one's buying it. So you have to have sales to be taught why you're doing what you're doing with the marketing vision and messaging. So they're bought in, and they got feedback because they talk to customers. You're missing the mark because this is what the customer's saying. This is their pain point. We're talking about X, and they're talking about they need W. And so we need to then adjust the pivot and get a white paper that talks about this. And then when
Case
there's that
studies.
kind of continuous loop of learning at the younger organizations, they need that more, not silos, but really invested in team together collaboration.
So what I like to do is develop a communication strategy so everybody's understanding the uh, everybody's understanding what it is that we talk about and what our values are and what do we convey. What is the founder CEO been saying about the business? How do we scale that to get the other people saying it in the same way, right? They
Right.
get the training so that they're comfortable with being on message. And then
And the
um,
great thing now is you have AI tools. So you could take like the pitch, take a pitch deck or a presentation the founders given 2 or 3 different type of presentations, and you can put it into Chat GPT or whatever AI model you like, and you can then have that be your training model where the BDR can start asking it questions and not using the time of the founder, but knowing what the founder would say if I had this question, and they're
mhm.
able to then get mind share, get that consistency in there. Then you put the marketing strategy on top of that in this AI. Then it becomes that training tool. And how do I respond to this question using this information? You don't have to wait for a manager to tell you how to answer or reply when a customer calls you or a prospect calls you, because it's all in the AI. You can have it personalized from the owner's voice. You take time to trust it. You don't just do it. You have to trust
Right. It
it.
doesn't happen right
Doesn't
away.
happen overnight. You have to teach it, train it, but you also have to, verify it. But once it's verified and you have it smooth, you feel good about it, you can really get some legs on this. And so, um, one thing I really talk about is when I see, I'm called the tenacious leader, and I talk about it as me going out front because I want it to be tenacity to be the reason why you're successful, not used as the explanation for your success. When you hear like end of a basketball, end of a championship game or whatever, like, man, you showed tenacity. You really showed it. The answer should be no. I had tenacity when I was practicing. I had tenacity when I showed up and practiced. I had tenacity doing the daily things that made me ready for this game. And that was the key. And so when it comes down to working with marketing, it's not just about getting the recipe of the communication plan of what this month's goal is. It's about here's the message for 2 months from now. Let's make sure we're on line. So when we execute it in 2 months, we're ready to hit the ball running.
Yeah. Well, you really need to give them a North Star to be able to talk about the business. And then another really, tell me about your experience, but I've done a lot of case studies over the years to help give the not only the customers the ability to understand it, but to give the salespeople the ability to tell stories about the company.
Yeah, that's another missed opportunity usually. The case study, here's the new case study, read it and use it. I always made it, we read it out loud as a group. We would then ask questions. We would then, how would we see this in the place of our customers? With the last customer we worked with, what was their situation? How does this white paper fit into their story? So you can connect the two. And it's not just all about, that case study and this is so smart, we're so good. No, it has to be practical. It has to be part of a solving of a problem for somebody.
Right. So the case study fits in and supports the communication strategy,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
Um, Another one I love. Have you ever worked with an ROI calculator?
I have. I have.
What's been your experience?
They're all over the board because sometimes who creates the ROI calculator dictates the value. And it doesn't always represent the company's perspective. It represents the sales perspective or it represents the marketing perspective. It
Hmm.
doesn't it doesn't show or reflect the company's perspective and not the
So
founders, but like everybody in the game so they can feel it.
that's
We had when I was at Teradata, we were going to a huge event every year, and they told us that we weren't coming back next year. The event manager was like, well, let me show you the leads we've got in the last 2 years and the money that came from those leads. And that still did not keep this convention up and running for the group. They
hmm.
got rid of it, but the ROI was there, but it wasn't from the CFO's desk. It came from just sales CRM.
So when I was thinking of ROI calculator, it's putting it in the salespeople's hands to talk to customers, right? Give them a tool to talk about it and at the point where they're comparing the ROI to other solutions. So, you know, have you
I see
worked
what you're saying. The ROI tool of going our
in
way. This
sales?
is what you should expect
Yeah.
versus a competitors or versus whatever. I think what my experience, sometimes customers don't trust it,
Mm.
so they just feel like it's your mind shifting me instead of letting me see the truth. I don't know if your data is accurate showing the other company. It's like all those checklists, the marketing piece that always has a checkbox. We have everything, the other one doesn't.
Yeah.
But you forgot the things that the other company doesn't have that
Does
you
have,
don't
right,
have. It's not a
right.
true comparison. Are these the ones you value? Then this is right. But is there anything else you value that we don't have on here, and where do we land? And that's where it really comes down to truly listening in your pitch, in your investigation of the customer's pain points, and how do you actually set it up.
Well, I think that's a really interesting point, your experience with the ROI calculator as being something that um, brings trust into question as opposed to building trust. And I, again, having an overall communication strategy and working this through so that it's part of the conversation, and it does reflect reality, right? If you're just making it up to shoehorn a sale, that ROI calculator is not going to be a tool. And if it's not part of the overall story where you talk about it earlier in the process, but use the ROI calculator at near the closing stage, so that it's confirming the conversation as opposed to just being out of left field. Does that make
Totally, I
sense?
can see it being better used that way in a sense that you talk about it, but you don't show it until the very end, until the customer says, "Well, where is this ROI calculator?"
Right.
"Oh, okay, you want to see it. Okay. What are you hoping to find?" Then you get the questions of why they want it, and
Right.
then you know how to present it so you can get their
And I love the way
agreement
you
with it.
said that because that's really the principle behind inbound marketing, right? Is to have things out there, ideas for the customer to explore when they're ready, right? And so marketing
But
and sales working together and building that conversation is so important.
yeah, I like to. I always use the example of a puppet master. The best BDR, the best salesperson is a puppet master. And a puppet master means what, and the strings to the puppet that they have is their questions. Can they ask the right questions to move the right leg forward, arm forward to get to the answer that they need? And so if you ask questions that set them up for that ROI calculator or for that white paper that closes the deal, then that's when you got the best salespeople because they know where they want to take the conversation and they use their questions to puppet the strings of the customer to a yes.
And we mean puppet master in the most positive of ways,
Yeah,
right? Not
yeah. I mean,
manipulating.
not manipulating. It's more like the old manipulate. What's the old? Get them to say three yeses before you ask them to close. That's a manipulative. Do you like me? Yes. Do you like purple? Yes. Do you want to buy for me? It's like no. It's information. It's knowing how. When I was telemarketing, when I was on the phone, and I was selling for-profit education, I knew once I got to 2 minutes, I asked one question, and that then started my pitch. And it was just go. And from that conversation, I knew where I was taking that client, that student, to find out where they want to really truly be and how education was going to be powerful for them. But it just took me that first 2 minutes of getting connection and trust with the person. And then I just started my questions and I had them all written out on the screen that I had, a piece of paper I had. And I just knew the questions so well and and I knew what the answers were before I even answered them. Before I even asked the questions, I knew the answers. And with those, I was able to then direct them to hopefully making that decision.
Very cool. What other kinds of support, like if I was your marketing guy, what kind of support could I give you?
A lot of it is just giving that if you're it's like make you plan as far out as possible and let us be part of the review process. So then we give insights to what's happening.
Hmm.
And not it's a lot of times marketing says, okay, it's June 1st. Here's the June plan, or it's 4 days at the beginning of the next month. It's May 25. Here's what June's plan is, and then they have to accept, buy in, and execute. And they're never going to be as good at it as if they were part of the conversation a month before or 2 months before and know that there is a convention here we're going to go and somebody's going to speak about this and we're going to be talking about this. So they have the 6 weeks or so lead time to execute the communication plan to actually make it work.
Right.
You
I
can't
find
just,
sales being a tremendous source of content to create, and sometimes sales makes up their own stuff, and it may be off message, and we need to align, right? But at other times, sales has the answers, and so we really need. I've just always worked together with sales to um, to support them, right? Bring new ideas to them, but also incorporate their ideas into the marketing so they feel part of it, right? They're part of the
Yeah.
team.
And sales have a very short memory. And so if they need something, they need it today, or they're just going to go down the rabbit hole and make it themselves.
Right.
Because I need to get it. I need to get it out today. Because that's just where they're at getting their numbers and their business and their. So there is a point where you have to manage their expectations, and then support them as much as you can be ahead of them, like they're trying to be ahead of the client.
And another source of this is talk about working with the founder, the CEO. Um, if they are out doing public speaking, if they're making presentations at conferences, right, being able to record those and turn those into articles and stories and uh, a new section of the website for a product launch or whatever that is. um, the where I've evolved with Publio Studio now is to really capture that and use the AI not to make stuff up out of whole cloth, but what is the founder saying? How do we embed that into the company when the salespeople aren't there? And then also get the salespeople saying the same thing that was set up on the podium and is now published on LinkedIn. And now everybody's, on message and it's very coordinated. Not easy to do, but that's the ideal.
It's the plan. It's like the work behind the Wizard of Oz's curtain. You have to do that churning. I remember when I was at H&R Block, there was a guy that came in, executive from Walmart, and he came in there and he always sat there next to the CEO, and he was there just asking questions. And then once I heard him say, I go, why do you ask so many questions during these evaluations? He goes, I love watching sausage being made.
What a great line.
And so it's like you gotta love the sausage being made. And in the sales process, in learning from the customer and learning how to pitch yourself and figuring out the best way to position it and using all the tools you have, you gotta enjoy that process of making that sausage, because if you don't, the sausage ain't any good. But if you do and you enjoy it and you question the marketing department questions sales team, and there's some true conflict and some true ideas generated, that sausage is going to be really good when you barbecue it on July 4th.
Hey, that's a timely metaphor right there. Um, well, it's been a real joy having you on again. Last time, I think I learned your first concert was Michael Jackson.
Yes, it was.
Uh, that must have been pretty incredible, especially as was that? Do I remember that was in the early '80s?
Yeah, it was Thriller. It was a Thriller
The
concert.
Thriller tour.
His
So
first
he was
first real.
just ascendant.
Yeah, he was just there. My sister drove me. She was what, 4 years older than me, and so I was 12, she was 16 or 13 and 17, kind of a thing. And we went to Mile High because I lived in Denver at the time,
Okay.
and we were at the football stadium for it, and it was amazing. It was just like, because you didn't see Michael was on every commercial,
Right.
he was on TV,
He was on
and we only had four
MTV,
stations back then, so everybody saw him everywhere.
Pepsi, right? He was working with
Pepsi
Pepsi.
commercials. Yep,
Yeah.
he was. It was amazing. But the most recent concert I went to, I didn't get to go to. It's
Oh,
so At Christmas time, I bought my wife tickets to James Taylor. That's been her favorite, musician since she was a kid, and then going through college and all that. That was
one
the
of my
music
fir
she
yeah, that was one of my
college
first
music,
memories.
and he's
What happened?
still he's still out there, and he still sounds really good.
Yeah.
Um, then what happened was my daughter, she had a lacrosse tournament. So I had, I'm like, I'm not going to miss the lacrosse tournament. And my wife was like, well, I don't want to miss James Taylor again, because the last time we bought tickets was COVID. Our James Taylor concert was me bringing the TV outside, and we watched a YouTube of a concert of his a couple of years before, but so she was able to take three of her friends, and they got to go celebrate, her birthday slash the concert all in one. So it was great for her to go see one of her favorite musicians. She actually went with me. My favorite musician as a kid was Kenny Rogers. It's so he came around here about 4 years ago, right before it was before COVID, I believe, because we didn't have masks or anything. So it was probably about 6 years ago, and it was the Gambler's Last Stand. Um, and he couldn't sing as well as he did. He had a lot of support people out there
Interesting.
singing, but he got the air in him to sing the Gambler. But every other songs, he maybe just had
I
the melody or
I
the
my girlfriend in high school and I used to drive around and play the Gambler. But one of my earliest memories of rock and roll was James Taylor, and
yeah.
I was in the Youth Conservation Corps in Chicago, and we worked all summer long on building trails and doing cleanup, and we cataloged wildlife on the canal system, and it was a great summer.
Wow.
And we had a pizza place that had open mic night, and one of the other kids in the program had a boyfriend who played guitar and would do open mic. And I'm getting chills just thinking of it because uh, oh, what's the song? Um, Fire and Rain.
Fire and Rain. Yep.
Do you know the story behind that?
Yeah, he actually shared it at the concert this time, and Kim shared it with me. But go ahead.
About how he had been in rehab and he had made a very dear friend. I don't know whether it was romantic or not, but they met every day at the same place, and one day he arrived and she was gone, and she didn't show up, and he found out that she had passed away, and so the the line, "I thought I'd see you again," just I remember. I'll never forget. I know where I was when I heard that story. We
Right.
were at the pizza place with open mic night, and every time I hear that song, I it takes me back to that moment.
Awesome. Awesome. Music is so powerful to bring back memories.
Absolutely. And we started this podcast because sales and marketing have to work together like a band.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And it's kind of funny when the team is jamming. When the BDR team is jamming and on the phone, I always try to have music on the background because that ignites them to just keep going because they get so many no's, they get so many hangups,
Right.
but it's about that 2% that pick up and they have a real conversation and can they be in the right mindset, to carry that melody of that sales pitch and get them to where they need to go.
Cool. Well, I have always loved working with salespeople and helping them get uh, that confidence and to be able to tell the story and to share information that's relevant. And um, doing podcasts now is, the new content creation. So it's
Definitely.
been a real pleasure to have you on the show, Kevin. And thanks for sharing your thoughts on helping make companies more effective as they engage a more professional beyond just the founder approach to sales. So thank you.
Thank you, man. Appreciate the opportunity. Look forward to the next conversation.
All righty, we'll see you soon. Take care, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Uh, you can learn more about our content creation strategy and how we integrate that with HubSpot and by turning conversations into customers. So till next time.